You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.
July 2023 has created a new record, that of being the hottest July in 120,000 years, according to climate scientists. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has declared that the planet is entering an era of global boiling. Now, what does this mean for our cities? More heat, more extreme weather, erratic and heavy rainfall, and massive urban flooding. Now, images of a drowning Beijing, China's swanky capital, is the most recent reminder of what fury climate change can unleash. And the memories of Delhi floods are still quite fresh in our minds, aren't they? Today on the Urban Agenda, we ask, are India's administrators aware of the increasing threats of climate change? And are there solutions to stop urban flooding? The fact is that the flooding of Indian cities has been making headlines for over a decade, and of course, it's just getting more frequent now. Let's start with 2000. Hyderabad, that got flooded. Ahmedabad, 2001. Delhi, my God, that's 2002, 2003, 2009, 2010, and 2023. Chennai, 2005 and 2015. Mumbai, again, 2005, 2017. Surat 2006, Kolkata 2007, Bengaluru 2017 and 2022. Now, if climate change means more flooding, what should we be doing to protect lives, homes, livelihood, health, all of which get affected with urban flooding? Devashish Dhar, author of this wonderful book, India's Blind Spot, Understanding and Managing Our Cities. He's also been with Niti Aayog for 5 years. And Akash Hingorani, urban planner and principal Oasis Design. This is a firm that's doing several city-level on-ground projects to address this issue of urban flooding. They join me today for some answers. Now, some of the top reasons for urban flooding, I'm only going to talk about these to put a context to our discussion. They're known to everybody, but it's a good reminder. Climate change related extreme events, that's number one. We've already spoken about it. High intensity rainfall. So for example, Mumbai got 78% of its rainfall on one single day. How much it gets in 1 year. Unplanned urbanization, we all know, we can see it all around us. Encroachment of floodplains, concretization of stormwater drains, loss of water recharge zones, lakes and green cover. These pretty much cover the most important reasons for urban flooding. Devashish, let me start with the question. So they are no longer sporadic. They're almost certain. Some city across the globe and in India will get flooded every year with climate change.
Absolutely.
My question is, has it become, because you've been a part of Niti Aayog and you're close, you have some connects with administrators, has it become a top priority or not?
Absolutely. So it's a very large sort of a uber question that you've just asked. Just want to simply start with the fact that cities, since Harappan civilization and until now, they have a very love-hate relationship with water, right? You usually find cities near a perennial source of water, and either it's a drought or it's a flood or it's a even heat island effect that we see in cities. So it's always a turbulent relationship. Climate change has only made it worse, and the administrators, both at the central, state, and also at the municipal level, the common citizens, they're all pretty much aware of it. In fact, the strategy for New India at 75 that Niti Aayog came out with, it has a separate section on urban resilience focusing on these issues. So I think there is definite growing cognizance of this fact, the growing cognizance of what the funding requirements would be, the growing cognizance of what the measures could be. But I guess we're always sort of playing catch up, and especially policy making, at least in India, largely has been done at the backdrop of either an adversity or a high pressure situation. So I think we're sort of catching up there. But it begets
So
the
you're
larger
saying
question.
there is cognizance,
Right.
but we're constantly playing the catch-up game, right? When
Right.
there is an emergency, everyone wakes up to
Right.
take care of it, and then everyone forgets about what's been happening.
Right.
Akash, I'm going to come to you and ask you this question. You've been, the recent big news was Coimbatore has rejuvenated its 9 lakes, is it? 9 lakes, right?
Yeah.
And all of those are a big example of how you can create water recharging zones, which is one of the ways in which you can stop urban flooding. But that is a smaller city. We are talking about our mega cities. I mean, look at the way Hyderabad construction is happening. Can you give me some examples of, so there are big ideas of what we need to do and there are low hanging fruits of what each city, mega city can do. Can you tell me what each mega city can do right away before the next monsoon strikes?
So, like what you said, Coimbatore eventually landed up doing 7 of the lakes that were selected under the Smart City mission. And the Coimbatore city, the lake system is a cascading system which in fact was created for irrigation. So all the water which comes down from the hills onto the river Noyal was kind of held back in these lakes, and each one overflows into the next one. And so it's like a very well sorted water story that the city has. So part of the project was to kind of restore all the connections and all the overflow systems, and study the catchment areas. But while doing that, we realized that water you can't deal with, be it a mega city or a small city. It has to be done at that level. So the catchment level is what you need to really focus on. So while a big city would have smaller catchment areas, each catchment has to be looked upon and sorted in terms of how the water will flow, where will it go. So typically what happens is, some cities have a very high water table, so you can't do too much of recharge. Some cities like Delhi, we can do a lot of recharge everywhere. So a decentralized approach to this problem, I think, is the only way.
Is the most critical. So you're saying not only decentralized, within a city it has to be very localized.
Exactly.
Looking at how water is flowing in a particular city or in that region. Okay, I'm going to come back to you. So Devashish, look at technology today.
Right.
2005 is when National Disaster Management had come out with a list of things to be done. None of it has changed. We'll show the graphics to our audience on what all they had recommended. All of those things, if they're implemented in a city, really will take care of flooding, right? Now we have GIS systems, technology, which can actually map all that Akash is saying.
Right.
Why is that not happening?
So the short answer is because the city governments are not empowered, and just like the promise of NDMA has not been fulfilled in terms of preventing flooding, similarly the promise of 74th Amendment in terms of city governments being empowered, mayors looking at it, and there's a whole machinery.
So where is the power? Still in the state control?
State governments.
State governments. So
because
it's not devolved down.
It is not
devolved. They have
devolved.
no capacity and they don't even have funds.
They are understaffed, they are underfunded, they are under sort of trained or rather mistrained, or I don't know. In some municipalities, they did not even recognize that this might be a problem. So there are a bunch of issues around that.
They are better managed than our cities are, way better managed. All right, that's a very important point. But let me swing back to the solutions. So Akash, very interesting what you said, that you have to look at each area particularly. Just like Coimbatore, you said, look, there were already lakes which have been rejuvenated and there was a flow of water towards them. You just had to clean them up. And there are wonderful images which our audience will see on how that smart city project has been taken care of. Give me some more examples. Give me an example of any project that you might have done in Delhi which can be easily replicated across other cities of India.
The land use plan of Delhi, you will have the road network occupies nearly 1/4 of your city's area. So all the water that falls onto the city, 24% falls directly on the street. And imagining all the abutting properties, they would also, kind of want
Get
to
flooded.
Yeah, so nearly 50% of your stormwater is happening on the street. So if there was any plan to, look at flooding, streets would be at the forefront of what you need to do. So when you're designing a street, typically what happens, your green belts or the green areas of the street are always higher. The curb is higher.
You're
so
saying that the green areas need to be lower.
Yeah. So
that the
otherwise,
water
how
can
would the
flow
water,
to the green areas.
Yeah. So that was the first basic, kind of revelation that we had when we were working on these projects. Green and the blue never get to, see each other.
Wow.
All the water.
How difficult it is to change this now?
I'll just come to that. So all the water typically today gets into a drain. That drain goes and meets a bigger drain and onto a nala. That nala will take the water back into the river. So essentially all the rainfall that happens in a city is designed to leave the city as fast as possible without flooding it. But what happens to recharge? What happens to groundwater? So in Delhi, like for instance, all our groundwater is depleting, but there isn't enough opportunity for the rainwater to actually get absorbed because the green areas are not designed.
They're at a higher level than the streets. Can you fix it? My question.
Yeah. So in our projects, we've been doing street design for some time now. So we decided that we will, try to address this problem. So we actually came up with a little handbook way back in 2012, where we looked at how the curbstone needs to change so that the green areas could be depressed and become like a swale. So the water from the road could get into this green area, get filtered, allow it to soak. So the principle is slow, spread and soak. So slow down the speed of the water, spread it out and let it soak away. And the overflow of the system can be connected back to the conventional drain.
All right. So that's very interesting. It's a workable solution and you can mark the blue and green areas of every city and this can be taken care of. Devashish, I looked at, everyone talks about the fact that, oh my God, Indian cities simply cannot catch up to cities of China, Beijing and Shanghai. But even Beijing could not stop the flooding which it saw this time, right? And they diverted the water to the villages outside, which was even worse, right? Or the outlying areas. They weren't villages, but they were urban outlying areas. Global examples of some things that can be replicated for Indian cities, because this is now a phenomena which we have to deal with.
No, I just want to take you back a little to the history that whenever such churn, demographic churn happens from rural, population moving from rural areas to urban areas, this churn happens in pretty much all countries. It happened in the US in the 19th century, in Europe in 16th, 17th, 18th century, not 16th, but 18th and 19th century. And London had to wait until 1854 to figure out the whole cholera problem, right? So the churn is bound to happen. And if China is facing, it's not that China has solutions to all the problems. So they are still a developing country and they're dealing with their own problem. The biggest example that I can give you is of Netherlands. They have this program called Delta Works, which is a bunch of civil engineering projects to manage water. And within that, they have this initiative called Room for Water. So that basically that ensures that all the water that you get during the rainfall flows to the river eventually and it's not disrupted.
So you also have to clear all the passages, right?
Exactly.
Now that desilting has to happen before the monsoons. Again, it's a chicken and egg situation because municipal corporations don't have enough manpower to get it done. And though I must say before G20, the area that I live in right around IIT used to be flooded and suddenly everything is cleared because now they have to make that passage clear. Is the road to Qutub Minar, right?
Exactly.
So if there is a will, there is a way. 100%. Look at the FARs of the cities, they've changed, right? If you look at Bengaluru, but the drainage system probably is still what was inherited about 30, 35, 40 years ago. Akash, very quick, 3 things that you feel immediately, in short, because we're running out of time, which we must implement, all city administrators must make a priority.
See, I personally really admire the smart city, mission, the way it set up the architecture for the SPV to, go around and take up all the agencies would have to kind of agree and collaborate and cooperate. I think that's completely missing.
And this is a very interesting thing. Smart cities mission has come under so much flack because when there's flooding, they say, what are we talking about smart cities? But essentially, it does create an SPV structure and all agencies do come together to make even small changes happen, right?
I have a contention to that point. My point is that the SPVs, although might be performing really well, but at some point they need to be given to the cities because it's also, you have created a third sort of structure. There are parastatal agencies, there are development authorities, and now SPVs. So at some point there has to be a convergence. So there might be a pocket of excellence in smart cities, which I agree they are in many cases, but that also needs to be sort of converged with the administration.
Replicated. Okay, Akash, last point.
So, typically in a city, the road comes under a different agency, the stormwater under different, parks under different, they don't talk to each other. So they're like working in silos. I mean, what I was trying to tell you was the SPV allowed us that, everybody would sit on a table and be,
agree.
And if
So,
there's
so
a
I think
problem,
both of you are talking about the same thing. You're saying SPV at least has given us an example of how to make different municipal corporations and different city bodies talk to each other and accomplish something. What he's saying is, let it not be a silo because people don't feel the benefits. It has to be a massively replicable sort of a model. Gentlemen, this is a conversation which we will have you back for many a times. But thank you very much. Good ideas, excellent ideas, and of course, a very useful conversation. We stand to lose lives, livelihoods, and billions of rupees with urban flooding. I don't have to say that. Everyone knows there are solutions to flood-proof our cities. Our experts have said some. None of these are rocket science. What we need is the vision to prioritize this agenda and the will to implement it, make it a priority. When we return, we bring you an inspiring story of a startup addressing another big city challenge, that of construction and demolition or C&D waste. Now, this is a waste which does not stink, it does not smell, but it causes air pollution, clogs our drains and adds to our mounting landfills. Stay with us.
You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com